First question was, when you think of the word neurodevelopment, when you hear that, what do you think? All right. Nothing? Yes, Monica. Neurodevelopment makes you think about how the brain grows. Yeah. Anyone else? Some of us get twitchy. I hate the appointments. They're really long. Sometimes it's super stressful. It's a lot of like going in and hearing where your kid isn't the same or where they're behind. Neurodevelopment too is like sometimes really complicated, and I worry that it's like permanent. Does it mean new diagnosis? Does it mean new doctors? What the heck? Yeah. I'm so sorry that slide didn't work. That was like my biggest hope. I was so excited for this. So, just really quick, this is the substitute teacher edition of neurodevelopment. Like I said, not a neurodevelopment provider, just a clinical social worker. I do developmental assessments that help our kids get, in my state, in Washington, get DDA, but I'm not an expert on it at all. So really quick, just a little bit of my background. I'm a heterotaxy parent. It's my son Christian in the picture over there. He was in the hospital for a year at Seattle Children's between the ages of 2.5 to 3.5 and waiting for a heart transplant. After his transplant, didn't quite take, and he ended up dying 3 months later. After he died, I became a medical foster parent. So in the bottom, that was me when I first had 2 tubies at once, and you can't totally tell from the picture, but I got puked on in the picture, and our nutritionist was there, or our dietitian was there, looking at both of my tubies, and I was like, I don't know what I'm doing. So I've had lots of kids that are medically complex, and then I went back to school to get my MSW. I started off as a recreational therapist, and then for those that haven't seen my kids in a long time, that's them in the picture. They're huge now. So the kids at home are 20, 18, 16 next month, and 8. So my goal isn't to make you experts in neurodevelopment. You are already that in your own families. I wanted to show you why it matters, where to go for help, and how to reframe disability and development, and how to find joy and delight in our kids right where they are. So in my current role, which is a super cool job, I help kids who have lived in the hospitals for months or years finally transition home or to a lower level of care. So we have kids that have been in the hospital usually around at least 6 months, and we've had kids that have been in the hospital 5 years, 8 years. And so our skilled nursing facility was created as a transitional place to help get kids out. Most of them are trach vent kids. What I do, I call it hospital detox. So, it's so interesting. We get kids, they come from the hospital. It's like the first time some of them have ever even been in a car, right? They go outside and they freak out because their life has been the world with the ceiling. They haven't felt the wind outside. They haven't seen kids running around crazy. They haven't been to a playground. They haven't experienced a lot of stuff. So we just take them out everywhere. So in the picture, that's my daughter. She comes with me on outings sometimes, and we're helping a kid who had never been to McDonald's go to McDonald's and go to the play place. And it was a kid that was just learning to take things orally, who was about her same age. And so she's such a, I want to say it's not manipulative, but it's really smart. She said, Mom, I think she probably needs some ice cream. And I was like, yeah, she does. And so my daughter she got an ice cream and she was like licking the cone. And wouldn't you know, the other kids started licking the cone, started playing on the play equipment. I just bring my kid to like be our little social peer model. So I have a really cool job. We do wraparound, and then we visit and stay with families after they go home. So I continue to do home visits to make sure they can stay out of the hospital. But my absolute favorite part of my job is taking kids home for a visit to start. And it might be the first visit in a really long time. We had a kid who hadn't been home in 8 years, who got to go sit in her room, or sometimes it's the very first time the family has even had the child in their home. So it's just this really sacred space, and it is the best part of my job. I don't share a picture of what it is for a while I'm with families. This is actually a picture of us when my son had been hospitalized for maybe like 3 months. They gave us, we joked it was a pass, but he went home for 10 days. And we got home at like 11 o'clock at night. And you see the dude yelling? It's because we were playing his favorite video game. We're all super tired and done for the day, but he was so excited to be home and to play his video game. And you know, I watch parents go through all these emotions. First, they're like flustered because the house isn't clean enough, or they're sad because the kid hasn't been home. And then they'll be so happy. And I realized, like, there isn't a word for the feeling, but the best word I can come to is they feel whole to finally have everyone in the house. Okay, I don't think I'm going to do this in enough time. I'm going to skip slides too. Okay, so neurodevelopment isn't just about milestones. It's about brains and relationships and how they grow together. Hospitalization, medical trauma, and sensory deprivation can change how kids develop, but we can make a big difference once we know what to look for and where to go for help. One really great guide, and I have a link at the end, is just the CDC's like milestones to look through it. It just gives you just an overview of it and what skills usually typically show up and when. This is so hard, especially for the parents that I work for, because when you see the developmental age of your child and not the chronological age, it hurts so bad. And so I really, really emphasize with parents, it's not about comparison, it's about communication. And it helps you describe what you see to schools, doctors, and therapists so they can respond effectively. I think some of the hardest parts are when your kid's development doesn't match what you would assume by looking at them. So parents should know about neurodevelopment because it helps us change how we work with our kids. It gives us a shorthand, right? And knowing if your child has a development difference doesn't label them. It unlocks supports and it helps others meet them where they are. So a really big part of it is I have to tell parents, like, look, we're playing the billing game. I need these diagnoses that I'm going to give your child in order for them to access these services and to get it paid for. If that's all we're going to talk about it as, just think of it as like, this is what we do, and I hope my kid really is lower than we thought so we can get more services. Try and think of it as the game. So, kids with complex heart conditions are at higher risk for developmental differences. There's lots of factors here. There's genetics, there's the kids that are cyanotic with oxygen flow, there's being on bypass, there is the environment too. The good news is monitoring and early support make a huge difference. Some hospitals, like the one that we're partnered with, is Seattle Children's, they've started a neurodevelopment clinic that wasn't around when my son was around. So important, and they have a single ventricle clinic for neurodevelopment. Really cool. So the big thing is look for neurodevelopment at your local children's hospital, and then also look for any cardiac neurodevelopment clinics. This slide, the next two slides, I'm going to skip over. You can spend forever reading them. I'll give you the link to my presentation, and you can look over it later. Okay, so remember I was a recreational therapist first. I don't know if I said that. And then became a social worker. But the really big understanding that you need to get where I'm coming from is the model of disability. Okay, there's the medical model of disability, and then there's the social model of disability. So the medical model sees disability as something to fix, or something that is a deficit, or that needs to be treated, like in order to cure it. And the social model says that the person isn't broken, it's just that the world isn't accessible enough yet. It's more about like what people's access needs are as opposed to what they can't do. One of the big things that I always push is interdependence. Okay, we push so hard for our kids, especially I go through this with my kids at school. They always want her to be independent. And I'm like, no, I want my child to be interdependent, where she knows how to express what her needs are, and she knows where she can go for help, and that she can also have a sense of feeling like she can do things with help as opposed to do it on her own. Because there are some things that my youngest just won't ever be able to do. It's really important to do this because it shifts our understanding from what's wrong to what is needed. So remember that a diagnosis just really isn't a label to fear. It's a key to accessing services, therapy, and sometimes even belonging. Many late diagnosed people say they finally feel relief once they get a diagnosis, realizing that nothing's wrong with them. They just needed environments that fit their brains. Example, I asked my kid too if it was okay to share. My third kid was diagnosed with autism when they were almost 13. And we sat down with the team. We did this ADOS, so it's a big, long study. Sat down with this big team, and they were talking to Lou, and Lou was just like, I knew it. I finally feel like I belong. I fit somewhere. This makes so much sense. And it was such a relief. And then instead of saying that my child has autism, my child said, I'm autistic, and made it a part of their identity. This is another Mentimeter slide, and I'm so bummed. I wonder if I hit that start, if that will work. Oh, okay. It's a poll. So you could say why you struggle to access neurodevelopmental services and what the barriers are. So we could look around and be like, me too. So sorry. So another lovely late diagnosis story is my own. So genetic inheritance and better diagnosis resources leads to a lot of parents also getting diagnosed. I see nods in the group. So my diagnosis came after my kids, and that is that I have ADHD and that I also have different, because I never got it diagnosed, they're not learning disabilities, but they're learning differences, how we phrase it. But together, my kids and I have learned to understand our unique brains, and we have learned to embrace interdependence, to rely on one another's strengths instead of measuring our worth by productivity. One of the biggest things, if I could go back, I cannot emphasize this enough, is internalized ableism. Does that make sense? So what that means is I carry within me this belief that I am lesser than, I'm stupid, I am lazy, I'm not paying attention enough, I just didn't work smart enough. I got through my undergrad, I have a bachelor's without any extra helps, right? But I worked my butt off. And I had tutors because I was an athlete, and so we got tutors for free. So I had a tutor in like almost every class. And so I got through college with a lot of activity and tutors and a lot of support, but I had a lot of moments where I just barely made it. I couldn't take tests. After I was sitting through one of my kids' appointments with their med provider, I was like, these questions are so dumb. I don't know why we ask them. Everyone thinks that way. The provider said, well, Aimee, do you know how, prevalent it is to have genetics play a key? And so she's like, and we know Ty, which is my husband, and then there's you. And she pointed at me, and we all busted up laughing. And all of a sudden, it made sense, right? So embracing this diagnosis made a difference. And then after my son died, my brain was especially scrambled, and I just could not function. And I recognized all this stuff. I recognized the signs. I went and I started medication. Oh my gosh. I didn't know that's what everyone else's brain felt like. It was, there's a comic I'd love to share, I'll share it later, but of just that you're walking upstream, wading in water your whole life, and don't know that no one else is even in the dang water, Like, you just don't know what it feels like. So once I had medication, that made a difference. And then when I went back to grad school, I used student disability services. And I learned that I have to talk through things. So I went to like all of my papers. I go to the writing center and we just talk through all of my research papers instead of me having to form it in my head and then write it. And then like the way I worked with projects and stuff totally changed. I have like dyscalculia, and so like they did adaptations for math. I finally understood statistics. Every research study I read, I always skipped over that section. And all of a sudden I was like, hot dog, I get this. It makes so much sense. But it wasn't until I worked with how my brain works and leaned into, I am gonna do it differently, but I have strengths in these areas, that I actually view myself as someone as worth. So one of the funny parts about why my kid was diagnosed so late is because our home has so many adaptations and accommodations. Because our 8-year-old also has autism, but in a higher degree. And so there's a lot of stuff that we're doing, but we didn't even think of it as an adaptation. One thing I would really, really love to do is maybe have a thread or something where people could just say, this is what we do in our house. You know, where there are things like this just makes sense? I would love to see what adaptations you have in your homes, because you're doing it, but you don't even think it's different till you go into someone else's home, or someone who hasn't been in your home is in there and they're like, what is that for? And you're like, duh, doesn't everyone have this? Yes, I love that. And then ideas of like what you do. I do like all my meetings at work with fidgets. I do a lot of stuff at home, and then there's just a lot of things. I'd love to see what you do. So this is how understanding how your kids' neurodevelopment and understanding how they work with it helps you when they're accessing the medical system. So here's an example, and I got permission first, from my now 8-year-old Kay. So we went to a new PCP, and Kay had a full meltdown. I picked her up midway through the school day. I ruined her routine. We went to a new doctor at a new building, at a new place, and nothing was right. And I thought she was gonna be fine. Spoiler alert, she totally wasn't. So she hit a full sensory overload the minute we walked in. The lights are too bright, the sounds are too sharp, everything's unfamiliar. And then she started yelling. This is hilarious, it is to me. I'm autistic, and you broke my routine, and this is hurting me. And everyone cleared out the lobby. They pulled all the staff out. They moved the people from the waiting room out, because she started yelling too, like, I hate you, and I hate everybody here. And so then I talked to Kay, and I'm like, okay, so it feels like you hate everybody here, but you hate how no one understands how to help you and how we didn't understand your routine. And with Kay, she is an external processor, so we have to give her like guided external processing, help her name what's wrong, how it feels, and then she can put it back in her little brain to make sense of it. And I was like, this was the schedule we had to do, and this is really hard. And then she's like crying, you're like, it's so hard. And everyone did really, really great. And we talked about how much we hate changes, and then we went into the exam room. But she will just have things like this. She is a very, very high-speaking kid, but also gets really, really rigid. Okay, so now to my second example. This is my other kid, Lou, also got permission. So Lou had a hospital stay just about a year ago. This is not my medical kid, too. I was like, this is not right. Lou went from getting first IV in the ER to ending up with like multiple procedures and ending up on a PDA. So Lou is just really, really high masking, so people don't necessarily catch it. They just think that Lou's a little rude. They're brilliant, and I don't mean that like every kid's brilliant. Lou's brilliant, really articulate, and has always had a really exceptional vocabulary, especially about medicine. Lou's special interests are pharmacology and neuropsychology. Lou's interning at a pharmacy right now and just soaks up everything, and then loves studying about the brain, especially autistic brains. Really into functional MRIs and all this stuff. Whew, over my head. So Lou can keep up. Lou's really, really just, you wouldn't think Lou has problems. Till Lou had pain. So one thing that I really understood was how much Lou was always filtering out in order to fit in. Once Lou was in a ton of pain, none of that was happening anymore. So I had to really advocate to explain Lou has struggles with interoception, which is processing and understanding the input of the feelings in your body. So like, for example, Lou doesn't get that like, oh, I might be hungry. Lou's like, I'm starving, I need to eat now. Lou doesn't get the like, I'm cold, I've been shivering, I should put on a coat. It's, gosh, my limbs hurt so bad it stings, I'm overwhelmed by it. So Lou feels things on the extremes. So the other thing is that Lou has alexithymia, which is also struggles to understand or communicate or interpret what they're feeling. So Lou will be like, oh, my elbows hurt really bad. And I'll be like, remember, that's where you feel when you're feeling anxious or have like some anxiety about something coming up. But Lou interprets feelings only by like the bodily sensation and will report it instead of labeling it as emotions. So hardest part about the hospital is they're like, where's your pain on a scale, right? Or they'll use the face scale. None of that worked for Lou. So the medical team saw this like super articulate teen who's like calm and logical and assumed that Lou wasn't in that much pain. But as her mom, I could really tell. And Lou will go into shutdown. So then Lou gets interpreted as not cooperating. And I'll be like, Lou's autistic. And they're like, but what does Lou want? Where's the pain? So we actually had to go to a nonverbal pain scale. And I'd have to say, like, look, Lou, your legs are moving a lot. I see these things in your body. This means you're actually in pain. And then Lou would be like, and then we gave meds. But we had so much struggle keeping up with things that we ended up just doing a pain pump because it was that intense. Lou ended up with a stint. Once Lou got the stint, it turned super yellow like a Lego. And then later Lou went in to actually have surgery to have the gallbladder removed. But the big thing was that once Lou was in pain, all of the autism was like super autistic. And then needing to, like having the words of like Lou has interoception and alexithymia and communicating that to the team, they listened. They changed. We all did the approach differently and we were able to support Lou. That's why I needed that diagnosis and I needed those words. Okay, so like I said, it's really important to take the diagnosis or the understanding of how your kid works and translate that into access. Have you seen this before, the circle of security? We use it a lot. It's about attachment. It has to do with like how kids are supposed to have the ability to kind of go away from the parent, but they want you to like support them, and then they want you to like watch what they're doing and delight in them and help them and enjoy it with them. And then they hit the point where they start to get a little overwhelmed and they want to come back to their safe base. And your job at that point is to protect them, comfort them, delight in them, and then help them organize their feelings. One big thing when I thought about this is how many parents of medically complex kids are stuck in protect me and comfort me. And we don't feel safe enough ourselves to let the kids explore because it's not a hypothetical. Stuff happened, right? We have seen what happens to our kids, and it's so hard to let them do things. The other part is play, and delighting in a child requires you to be absolutely present and in that moment, but our bodies, from being these caregivers, are stuck in hyperarousal, where we can't be present. And so then I realized like my job actually as the social worker is to kind of take the secure base for the parents so then the parents can support the kids. So it's just about being present. And I'm going to skip a bunch of things. So the really important thing is to be encouraging play with the kids, right? This is Kay, who's intellectually delayed. But do you see what she stacked up? This is how Kay plays. This is the stuff she would do. Letting her explore and do things in her own way, let me see how gorgeous and beautiful and unique she is. And I would just sit there in that moment. She doesn't want me talking through it, but she wants me there to witness it. So, really, really hard, and I have to explain this to parents all the time. You have to take the long view, okay? You have to understand that growth takes time, and it happens in the kids' own time, and that you need to be in the moment with them and just trust in the process. So there is a super gorgeous sculpture. It's a kinetic sculpture that's in Seattle. It's called Not Afraid of Falling. And what it is this kid actually does a swing over the course of a week. And to me, it reminded me about being present and letting things happen in their own time. And to delight and enjoy it, but just to understand it will happen when it happens. I have to talk with parents that have kids that have really, they have a lot of struggles with communicating what they're experiencing. And so I have to tell them to slow down. Look at your kid's heart rate. Look at how your kid's shoulders are. Look for really, really small clues to know how to engage with your child. See what they're not telling you with spoken words, but through their body, and connect with them. I have a list of resources. Another slide I had was for you all to put in your favorite resources, but the slide doesn't work. Well, no, that's just the slide of the ones that I like, but then you can put in the ones that you also like too. Yeah, you did? You put it in there? Those ones worked, but not the other ones. Okay, by Sunday, I'll be a pro. So just the part of neurodevelopment to remember is that like it's multifactorial. It's biology, it's experience, it's so many things. It's not how good of a parent you are and what you've done. It's just what it is. Remember to focus on access needs instead of deficits, and that will help empower you. And remember to slow down and just delight in the moments with your child and be there with them and just go along for the journey. That's it.